Okay friends, one of the first things we need to do to get started on replacing our wheel bearing is to safely raise and support the Jeep so the wheels are off the ground. After that, remove all 5 of your lug nuts and then the wheel. Now that we have the wheel off, we want to pay attention to the ABS wire. If you were to look along the back side of the shock, you're going to be able to see where the 2 little push pins are that hold it to it. Let's go ahead and reach back there and pull on that. There's going to be a little red tab that I'm going to try to feel and then remove, and then I'm going to squeeze the tab, pull this off. Dismount it from all its securing points. Now let's just turn the wheel so we have access to our caliper mounting bolts. Remove both of those. Now we're going to remove the caliper and we're going to hang it safely so it puts no pressure on the flex hose. Remove your rotor. Next, let's remove our axle nut. Let's go ahead and put the axle nut on, just a couple threads. Give the axle a couple loving bonks just to break it free from the bearing. Perfect. Now looking from the back side of the knuckle, we're going to remove our 3 mounting bolts. Use a 12-point 13 millimeter. The next thing we need to do is remove the bearing from the knuckle itself. You can do that typically by hitting along here with a hammer and just try to break it free, or if you had to, you could try putting the bolts in from the back a little bit, a couple good threads, and then give those a couple loving bonks to break it free. Either way, some penetrant's going to be your best friend. There we are. Let's get our backing plate off of here. There it is, friends. Now the next thing we're going to want to do is clean up the mating surface on the knuckle itself. Now before we go ahead and start putting anything together, it's important to make sure that you clean up the threaded area on all of your bolts. So now it's going to be time to install our brand new bearing. Go ahead and put the wiring so it goes through the backing plate. We're going to set this so it comes right up and over the axle. You're going to see the splines line right up and slide it in. Be very careful for your ABS wire. You definitely don't want to damage this, so we'll just go ahead and set that aside. Once you get it so it's semi-lined up, go ahead and start in all 3 of your bolts, and then we'll snug them up and torque them to manufacturer's specifications. Let's torque this to 75 foot-pounds. Make sure you clean up the backside of your rotor. A little bit of copper never sees on that mating surface. Now let's put our rotor on there, and I like to put on one of the lug nuts just so the rotor can't flop around while I continue working. Now it's going to be time to get our caliper back on. When you put on your bolts, make sure you use a little bit of red thread locker. We'll start these in, and then we'll snug them up. Now let's torque these to 100 foot-pounds. Let's take that ABS wire, reroute it so it's going to be resecured again. Now typically I like to leave the rest unsecured until I get this plugged in, that way there I have plenty of slack. Once you get it clicked in, make sure you push down that red tab, make sure it's completely locked, and then secure it in to your strut tower. There we are. Now at this point we can continue on to resecuring everything. Now these push clips are generally the hardest to do. Just kind of line it up and then push it in. There we are, just double check to make sure it's completely secured the whole way around. This looks amazing. Now the next thing we need to do is get our axle nut back on here. Typically it's a good idea to go ahead and replace the axle nut, but if for some reason you're going to be reusing it, make sure you use a little bit of red thread locker on the axle itself. Go ahead and start this on there, we'll bottom it out, and then we're going to torque it to 100 foot-pounds. Now it's going to be time to torque the axle nut to 100 like I said. To be able to do that without this spinning, you could just use a pry bar coming across the studs just like this. Just make sure you don't damage the studs in any way. Now let's get the wheels on here. We'll start the lug nuts, bottom them out, and then we'll get the wheels so it's just barely touching the ground and torque those lug nuts to 122 foot-pounds. torqued. Okay friends, now all you have to do is get it the rest of the way down on the ground. Take it for a road test, look for any ABS light. Assuming everything looks good, get yourself safely down to your local alignment shop.